so much of our society is focused on the materialistic outcomes, like money or like an award of some sort or winning at a competition. If we keep focusing on those, then we miss the fact that, what was really important here was the journey.
Welcome to Unlatched Mind. My guest today is Dr. Po-Chi Wu. We've had Dr. Wu on before. In this episode, we dig into an article that Dr. Wu wrote titled Frictionless Learning. The article really articulated, amongst a bunch of other things where Dr. Wu really draws a corollary and contrast at times the difference between what happens to us when we're learning versus having fun versus working versus playing. And we really kind of dig into some of the neuroscience behind that. And we didn't get too technical at all. The conversation really evolved to us just looking at, us as society and just exploring whether or not we're approaching this whole thing the right way. Whether we're, how many of us are money focused only, how many of us are just more hobbyists and less concerned with money. Where's that balance? Where's that line? We kind of touch on and some, we talk about how there is a balance needed between kind of capitalistic, economic driven folks that really only care about the money, which obviously is an extreme and it's not healthy to either extreme. And obviously on the other end of the spectrum, if you're just a hobbyist and just love doing things that you absolutely love and you don't really care about the money, unless you do some real careful planning with your life, that can be problematic as well. So anyway, we navigate through all that, and I think we had a great discussion. So with that, I give you Dr. Wu. Hey, good morning, Po-Chi. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Excellent. I appreciate you doing this, by the way.
Sure.
So anyway, let's jump in. Like I said, again, I do appreciate it, and we'll just see where this thing goes. I read your Frictionless Learning blog, and now that drove me down a rabbit hole of I feel like, and I don't know if I started going down the wrong path, but in my head I was thinking I need to just quit my job, do things that enable my creativity, do things that I'm passionate about, and I think I may have taken it a little too far, but I don't know. You really contrast learning versus having fun, and in my head I'm like, why can't we do both? Why can't and then I started thinking about. I started equating learning, and you kind of articulate learning as we consider it as work, and we have a lot of pushback against learning where having fun's easy. It's quote unquote frictionless, right? So I guess you want to summarize what you were going for with the article, and then we'll kind of dissect it a little bit.
Okay. So actually your first response, I think, is entirely understandable. But then you think again a little deeper and of course, there's no one set path, and there's no path that I want necessarily to take readers into. And you understand this from my writing. I don't actually give many answers. I give hopefully thought-provoking ideas. I give suggestions for people to think about change if they choose to change. And if they don't, at least they understand a little better and be more comfortable with who they are. Mm-hmm. So for people who want to feel like life is kind of hard and suffering and they're working so hard, fine. That's perfectly okay. I think that the mindset of associating learning with fun makes everything easier, including doing jobs that you think you're doing just for the money, mm-hmm. or things that, relatively even boring or routine. And it really has to do with, what are you focused on? Of course, if you're focused only on money, that's one thing, but that's not actually the way we work. That's another mindset. Let's call it rationalization. But in the work, I think other than not even the most deadly, I was thinking of toll takers. For some reason, that image came to mind. Yeah. Maybe because last night my wife and I drove into San Francisco. Of course, we don't go through the so-called fast track, the electronic passages now. But, you would think that being a toll taker must be one of the most dreadful jobs. I mean, akin to cleaning out sewers. Right. And it's hard to think that, what could you learn in that job? But maybe there is, maybe there are all kinds of things that you could be thinking about or whatever, instead of focusing on the drudgery side, think about, well, what can you learn from this job? Maybe it ends up feeling very meditative, and then suddenly it becomes very different. Or you think about that very, very brief opportunity to connect with another human being,
Right.
give them a special smile or just something. There is always opportunity to learn, and that is actually the point. And if we believe that, if we take that as the first premise, then actually we can learn to enjoy it. I think what we when we think that learning is hard, of course, learning some things is more difficult for some individual than another. You mentioned in your notes that you are a drummer and you obviously love music. I, as you know, play the piano, and I took that very, very seriously for a while. And in a way, I went through a similar decision in my own life. Is this something I can pursue as a career, something I want to do? And everyone tells you, well, as any kind of musician, most likely the best you could hope for is just one of like home teachers.
Right. Right.
So no, I don't think that's the life I want, because that's not the job. That's not only doesn't make money, that would not be a satisfying way to live.
Right.
Now, that has nothing to do with the love of the music and the love of the art and so on. And so, you and I, we use music as a hobby. Maybe we play an hour a week or whenever, how much time we have. And we can enjoy that immensely. We can learn some new pieces, or you mentioned like listening, you get so excited. I can do that as well. And then suddenly it's a totally different relationship, and I think that's the idea of frictionless. If we have this relationship with ourselves where we're sort of fighting, one side of us is fighting the other, whether you call that the head and the heart or two different parts of your brain. Why do we fight? No one is making that. There is no inherent battle. It's not something imposed. It's not something inherent in the activity. It's something we simply create because we say, oh, no, learning I have to work hard. I have to concentrate. I have to, eliminate other people. There's so many reasons why we choose to have that battle, that internal struggle.
Right. Yep.
And that's interesting. That's the part that is so fascinating. That's what all the questions are about, is saying, okay, why am I resisting this change? And, in your notes you mentioned, of course, it's all about different kinds of fears. It's all about this comfort zone, about our self-identity. And you called out one of my, a quote about we evaluate ourselves as we imagine others evaluate us. And it's interesting. I think are you Catholic? We are Catholic, and so of course in the prayer we say, lead us. What is it? Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive others who trespass against them.
Right.
But it sounded very much like that. Why do we judge ourselves? Why don't we let, in this sense, God, if you will, judge us, just as we also don't judge others, right? And so why do we set up so much difficulty? And I think this is what we realize when we have like serious fun, like music is for you and for me. When we have serious fun, we just absolutely love the learning, right? We can't wait to learn a new piece, even hear the same piece for the 100th time or the 1,000th time, maybe by a different artist, the same artist.
Right.
Somehow it always sounds fascinating and fresh and exciting. Why do we do that? When instead of, why can't we focus on that? And so, our lives cannot be 100% in this state of bliss. I think that's also unrealistic. But whatever the balance is, whatever you can manage, even again, a few minutes a day or an hour a day, that can just change your whole outlook toward everything.
You're 100% right. I mean, you also bring out the topic of inner versus outer directed people, or just just mindsets, I'd say. And when go back to your example with music, if I'm learning a new piece or something that's really complicated that I just want to just get down, and I know it's going to take a lot of work, and I put work in quotes because at that point it's not work at all. And it's driven from an internal. I would guess I kind of assume inner directed versus outer directed, these tenets that you lay out, or is that I'm assuming that's akin to maybe an inner versus external versus internal kind of values, where you're guided by your own internal, you don't really care about others, approval from others, right? So if you're more internal driven or internal values, you're just doing it for yourself, your own self-interest, and your own self-interest sounds negative, but your own just bettering yourself. So, I feel like when I'm, I don't get to do it nearly as much as I'd like to, but to your example, when I'm learning a new piece, or I'm trying to learn some complicated, drumming's very, we get the 4-limb independence, and there's some really crazy time signature stuff that the harder it is, the more exciting it is to me. And I know the odds of anyone ever seeing me do this is almost zero, especially now. I don't know when I would ever, and I love some really odd kinds of music. And it's just, but it's so rewarding, even knowing that I most likely will never show anyone what I'm doing. So it's almost like that I feel like there's a huge contrast for that. Intrinsic, that's the word I was looking for. Intrinsic versus extrinsic values, where if you can be driven by the intrinsic mostly, I feel like, that just seems so much more fulfilling. And
totally agree.
And then drawing back to learning and having fun, I feel like when we have fun, we're doing things that just are intrinsically fun, that we enjoy.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Right. So it's
no, that's exactly right. And, unfortunately, our society, the economic, the nature of our economy, the nature of our politics now, has always been, and this is not to blame any particular party in power. Everything we have in America, because our value is so heavily on entertainment, on being entertained, on focusing on this ever shortening attention span, which is also remarkable. We feed this cycle. We say, oh, this is the problem with millennials. They have this, instantaneous gratification. They Snapchat was such a revolutionary idea. You post something and then it disappears.
Right. Completely targeted the actual psyche of where we're all at, right? The timing was perfect.
That's a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of communicating with someone usually used to be, aside from just very casual stuff, it was meaningful, even if it was sort of superficially meaningful. It wasn't something you just threw away. It wasn't like garbage.
Right.
And that's really funny, right? We value entertainment. We pay entertainers. We pay sports athletes just astronomical amounts of money.
Right.
And it's not to say they don't deserve it. They deserve whatever they get. They are extraordinary at their craft and their skills, and it's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong when you look at that, and then you look at a high school teacher who can inspire hundreds of students in his or her lifetime, and they can barely survive.
Right.
There's again, you're exactly right. It's all about values. It's about our intrinsic values. It's about our societal values. It's about our economic values. Our economic values are focused on money.
Yes.
Everything is measured in terms of money, and therefore, every black kid who grows up in the inner cities, he says, "Oh, I want to be a Shaquille O'Neal or now a Steph Curry or somebody," and that's great if it motivates them. But how few? This is like one out of how many hundreds of thousands.
Right.
And it is good if it motivates them to put in the time and love the game and do all those things. But obviously they're not all going to reach that particular pinnacle. And that's what's wrong. There's nothing wrong with encouraging and motivating and inspiring. We all need that. So in that sense, we want the feedback from society, but we need it to be in this very positive, growth-oriented learning sort of model. What do you learn when you set this goal? And I'm sure you did this as a drummer. I mean, there are drummers that I'm sure you look up to. I'm not terribly familiar with that. I'm actually quite fascinated with drumming, but it's sort of more recent. This is another long, really interesting story. But I grew up with role models in piano playing, and it's fascinating. You can just listen to them play, without knowing who they are, and instantly you would recognize the style, the energy that they put out. It's absolutely amazing. And for drums, just like piano, you would think how limited for again a lay person, someone who doesn't know the instruments, would think, how much subtlety can you get out of these things? And yet the great ones, it is quite
It's
unimaginable
almost
what they
infinite.
can do with
Yeah,
it.
it really is.
It,
Yeah.
it is. It is actually
Yeah.
infinite because it is a blend of their energy and whatever muses there are out in the universe. So those are things you only tap into when you have that love of learning. When you just you lose yourself, you embrace yourself, you embrace your creativity, and you get such great satisfaction, while you do it. And that's the only path. I believe that's the only path that allows you to achieve something extraordinary. Whether that makes you an economic success is a totally different question. You look at what our economic successes today, YouTube video stars. It is just absolutely mind-blowing that we have a system that allows that kind of entrepreneurship.
Right.
On the one hand, it's great. You 7-year-old child makes $1 million because of his advertising YouTube videos.
Oh yeah.
On the other hand, there's something really sick about a society that does that.
It is,
anyway.
but is it the society, or is it just open markets that let I feel like it's more of a human problem or a human thing, right? Where it's just, if I want to, I guess the economy jumps in and takes advantage of that human nature, right? So obviously if there was, Ryan's toy review, my kids are addicted to that. God bless the Ryan family. They nailed it. And I wish them all the best, and they did it right. But you're right. It's Ryan's always, just I don't know if you've seen him, but he's extremely charismatic. He's always been a little boy that you just want to see and just cuddle. Like, so he just had he was blessed from the beginning, and his parents must have an opportunity. Whatever they did it right. I don't know anything about their backstory, but you're right. If you look at that, and I remember this is, I would, friends and I would have that discussion, like, wouldn't that be great to have that life, and you can just open toys and have a camera running around your house all day in your pajamas? And I'm like, well, at first I thought that, then I realized, if that's what I was doing all day, every day, would that be fulfilling? Even if I knew, right? So like, who would I be, like, how would I really be like, how would I really expand my impact on the world? And, and not to degrade from what they're doing, I just don't know if it would be for me, even though it seems quite easy, at least initially, if that's your day job. But I don't feel like my intrinsic value meter would be spiked doing that kind of stuff.
Right, but just think about, what do you do when you're 17? Let's say you had that start, and now you have a few $1 million or maybe tens of millions of dollars in the bank. Now what?
Exactly.
What is your life about? And then on the other side, you think, every suburban mom thinks, oh, my kid is cute. He could do this or she could do that.
Exactly.
This is simply the wrong idea. Yeah, it's great. As we said, it's entrepreneurship at its best, and it's fun, and it's all these good things. But it is absolutely one of those very evanescent kinds of things. And actually, people don't understand what they learn, again, from that kind of experience. I think on the positive side, anything you can do to support your child to be more open, to be more, again, charismatic and fun, and it's all good. But where is a more fundamental value? What are you going to do with it? You've been given an incredible gift to the child and to the parents, an opportunity to represent something in the world. Do you want to be that 15 seconds of fame, or do you want to use that to do something else? So Ryan's parents may very well have a longer range plan, and they could go on like some of these people that do become enormously wealthy, and they give back a tremendous amount, and that's all good.
Right.
But why do you want to wait for 50 years or 40 years of your life until you so-called you made it, you have this enormous wealth, and then you give back? I don't know. I have that, again, this is a purely personal preference. I would think that for our daily life, we would find not only more pleasure, but more value in our daily life if we kept having this idea that this is what we can do every day. We can give back, just like the toll taker. We just so be more friendly, smile at people, be a little helpful in little ways. That
Right.
would change the world so dramatically. You don't have to be in a position to give away hundreds of millions of dollars in order to have an impact
Right.
on the world. And in fact, yeah, so this is what I'm arguing for, is very much very basic human values that are meaningful over time, over societies, that cross all boundaries. There are no borders. There's no feeling about your whatever, your skin color, ethnicity,
Mm-hmm.
personal preferences. This is how we learn to accept diversity. The problem with focusing on what we think are very saleable or very appealing traits is what reduces diversity. It makes us all sort of clones and would-bes, wannabes, and this is not the right idea
Right.
either.
Right. Yeah. See, I always wonder if because as I was reading through your stuff, I'm thinking I always think a dream for me would be have enough money in the bank so my everything, kids are fine, family's fine, everyone's happy and comfortable, and then I would go to school. I feel like I'd want to go to school full time, because I just feel like I feel like that would be a dream. Like one degree would be in, I don't know, quantum physics, because I just don't get it and I want to get it. The other one would be in theology, because there's infinite just space to think that, right? And I would just go down the
Right.
list, and I just think that would be an absolute dream. Then the other side of me saying, well, then I'm not giving back anything. You can't just go through a life of consuming knowledge. Right. So you
Right.
have to then maybe I'll take 2 years off, be a teacher of one of those things. I just think that I just think that freedom would be for me. Now I'm an extremely intellectually curious person, as you are, and a lot of folks
Yeah.
I speak to on the podcast. But I don't know if, and I always wonder this, is are or everyone's not like that. So I feel like a lot of folks just enjoy kind of towing the line, if you will. They enjoy kind of being more extrinsically focused, and just
Right.
that actually does make them happy. So I'm not sure, the template that you're laying out, I certainly agree with it. I think if you take the globe, we'd be much better if we just said, hey, do this, don't do that, right? Don't be so focused on money. I'm just not sure it's for everybody. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts there are.
Yeah. Again, I think that my article could be interpreted as you just mentioned, but obviously not everybody really wants to do that. I'm not talking about dedicating a person's life to learning. I'm dedicating, the idea is to dedicate the time that you spend, whatever it is that you are doing. Hopefully you have some choice in what you do. Virtually all of us do. And how can you use that time to learn
Right.
and to find pleasure in that. It's not that we all need to keep pushing the boundaries of knowledge that we don't yet have, although that's certainly good. It, it again, whatever we do, hopefully we want to do it better.
Right.
Better in terms of some level of performance. If we're paid as an employee of a company, they do care. And even as a government employee, where you think, well, it's kind of hard to get fired unless you screw up royally. Still, you would like to believe that as an employee of the DMV, the motor vehicle, Department of Motor Vehicles, that your job has a higher purpose. It's not just to fill out forms.
Right.
Yeah, if you see your job as filling out forms, then of course you have defined yourself in a rat hole that's totally unpleasant. I mean, who wants to do that? And today, when we think about that, that's when we think about, wow, automation, artificial intelligence is going to eliminate all those jobs. And absolutely, and it should eliminate jobs that are totally routine, that are deadening to the human soul, that actually requires very little human contribution. On the other hand, if you are working in the Department of Motor Vehicles, you are trying to promote safety, you're trying to help people, learn how to be more responsible, good drivers. I mean, there's a whole different attitude that you bring.
100%.
And
Yep.
therefore, every new person that comes in to get a driver's license or deal with a fine or whatever is an opportunity to touch someone's life in a meaningful way. And
Right.
that should be your job, right? And that's what you are constantly learning on the job, because every new person, and you see this very, very well in the hospitality business. Hospitality is a fascinating industry because everything's about customer service.
Yes.
Now,
Yep.
of course, there's an extreme where, people with extreme wealth, they just demand everything, and, you feel like, anyway. But it's the principle. It's the principle of understanding that it's not about you. It's about whoever the customer or the client is, and trying to anticipate and trying to deliver something that is kind of like above and beyond the routine, whatever the routine means.
Right. Right.
And so you can see this really at every level. And it's just something we don't teach. We don't teach. We don't encourage. Certainly not in school, not in not in our employment. Our employers, they kind of give lip service to the concept, but they don't really follow through. They don't build that into the culture. They don't evaluate people that way. They evaluate people. If you're in housekeeping in the hotel, it's brutal. Some hotel chains ask their housekeepers to clean like 15, 18 rooms a day. And so it's just by the clock, boom, 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 boom. Others that have more of a culture focused on the customer experience, and of course, higher end hotels, they might only do maybe 12 or 13 or some number like
Right.
that. Anyway, a smaller number, because they're expected to put more thought and care and attention to detail. But why is that? Why can't a 3-star hotel provide essentially that same level of call it conscientiousness as a 5-star hotel? It won't have all the amenities.
Right.
It's not as luxuriously furnished, and sure, that's fine. We all understand that. But why can't it have a fundamental relationship with its, the company and the hotel, that relationship with its customers? And this is what I'm talking about: the difference between learning and work.
Mindset.
The work,
Mindset.
it's saying it's not a relationship. You literally see yourself as a slave, being asked or asking yourself to do something that is difficult, and you resist. You don't want to.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it.
Yep.
And so instead of feeling that way, again, it's only in your mind. And by the way, even one of these really hardworking housekeepers that has to do so many, they greet customers in the hallway passing by, 2 seconds, 3 seconds.
Right.
How long does it take to smile and just say good morning, good afternoon, whatever? Right. It would change your whole day.
Right.
Not just for the customer, for yourself. You feel, wow, I'm here. I have an important job. Yeah, I'm only paid minimum wage, but this is an honorable living. I'm performing a valuable service.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not getting well paid for it. That's a different question entirely. But putting that up front and saying, oh, I'm being treated like a slave, and everyone is rude to me, and customers don't leave me tips, and
Right.
Okay, fine. If that's the way you want to see the world, then yes, I'm not saying that's not reality. Okay, that absolutely is a reality. But why does that have to limit how you behave for yourself, right? I'm talking about how you feel about yourself, not just the customer service side.
And I feel like the blame is all around, right? So the example you just gave, right, is say the housekeeper. You have the housekeeper, you have the employer, the hotel, and you have, say, the customer. So the mindset of the customer could be, and I've seen folks like this, and you kind of want to smack them, but they just walk around looking at the housekeeper like they're somehow beneath them, and my room wasn't clean, as opposed to walking by and looking at the housekeeper, him or her, and just saying, hey, my room was excellent. My kids had such a great night's sleep. Thank you so much for doing this. Those the little chocolates on the pillow, whatever. Let them know that you didn't just do a manually meaningless job. That you actually made my family have a great time. I appreciate that. Simple. How long would that take? Right. So you just elevated their quote unquote job to, or their task, quote
Yep.
unquote, to value adding service. Big difference, right?
Right.
Or how about now?
Right.
So that's one prong. The other prong is the employer. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
not just you got to get 18 rooms done, get it done quick. We got to make money, blah, blah, blah. How about, hey, we got a lot of folks coming in. Our ratings are going up. It's
Mm-hmm.
all because of you guys
Mm-hmm.
really, really making, this hotel clean and comfortable. We could not do it without you. Remember,
Mm-hmm.
you're making people take, 5 days off work. It's a big deal. And you're making it you're memorable for them. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah.
and if I would say if that, the customer and the employer, I know we're using a specific example here, we're on that same page, then the employee would take that natural mindset where, wow, I'm making a
Mm-hmm.
difference. And as opposed to I'm
Mm-hmm.
scrubbing a bathroom just because I have to. So,
Yeah.
I think the blame goes all the
Exactly.
way around, but and I think we're taught,
Yeah.
I think we're taught to just execute within the confines of the system. Like, in other words,
Right.
we're not, what's a good example? So as opposed to just doing X, Y, and Z, and here's the process, here's the procedure, focus on what you're really doing, the value you're adding. Because in an open society, really, you don't prosper if you're doing something that doesn't add value. So you have
Right.
a job, and obviously the more quote unquote value you give, in most cases, the more quote unquote economic success you'll have. But even that gets a
Mm-hmm.
little squirrely at some of the top ranks. But so it should be more or less like, or like as a teacher. I mean, teachers,
Mm-hmm.
I think, are a prime example of this intrinsically motivated folks that just really are really understand the importance of what they're doing. And you're right, they just don't, the economic benefits just not there. And that's really unfortunate. But if we could all focus,
Mm-hmm.
the system was focused on, like I took it at work, my day job, a lot, some of the younger folks, like, hey, forget about trying to impress me or forget about trying to impress the bosses. When you're giving a presentation or when you're doing work, remember what you're doing and why you're doing it. Don't try to
Right.
worry about the internal operations type stuff and the things you got to go. Yeah, that's all necessary in place for certain reasons, for very valid reasons as well. But focus on what you're bringing. In our case, you're bringing, potentially, game changing technology to the DoD. Right, that's kind of what we do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
think about that:
Yeah.
driving costs down,
Yeah.
increasing safety in our military systems, all that
Right.
stuff. It's
Right.
like
Right.
focus on that, and then frankly, even if you are only focused on money, guess what? If you really focused on the true value you're adding, you'll be viewed as a better employee anyway, and you'll end up
Absolutely.
so it's a win-win. So it's just
It is.
interesting, and it's like, personally, everything you're saying resonates with me, and I think we can push that down to the younger generations and focus on value adding, have fun. That if you're a toll booth operator, like your example, hey, make yourself a challenge. You're gonna probably have, I don't know, 5 seconds, maybe it's more, maybe it's 30 seconds if there's some change to be handed out with potentially hundreds of people today. Could you learn 10
Mm-hmm.
things? Absolutely. From them.
Mm-hmm.
How about a quick 5
Mm-hmm.
second,
Mm-hmm.
hey, where you headed today?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. We'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you something. I said hi. And whatever, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
might be. I think your mindset could completely shift and make for it's just a much better outlook on everything, frankly.
Right. So I agree with everything you said, and I want to just highlight, one of the particular lenses through which I see the world, and this is through my activity as a teacher and mentor, or instructor and a mentor of young people who want to become entrepreneurs. And I tell them my job or my aspiration, the reason I'm doing this is not to encourage everyone to go off and do a startup, because that's an irrational act and
Mm-hmm.
that's way too risky for most people. But learning this entrepreneurial mindset, which is really everything that we've been talking about, one particular aspect of the
Yep.
entrepreneurial mindset is this idea of continually growing, of continually seeing every interaction with every kind of person, including housekeepers in a hotel, as an opportunity to learn something new about the world, about themselves, about the industry. I mean, everything that is presented to us is in fact an opportunity to learn. I'm,
Sure.
sitting at home, I'm looking out at the garden, and there's so much to learn just looking at the garden. Not because I want to be a landscape person, or it's not a fancy garden. It's a very ordinary kind of suburban garden, and it's not even it's not beautiful in any sort of cultivated sense. It's it's very nice, but the point is, young people, and I'm very encouraged by what I see among millennials. I think they actually do have a greater sense of um, meaningful values and more personal values, which is exactly what is confounding so many employers
Right.
today. Uh, so many companies are to say, how do we deal with the millennials? They don't seem to value our company brand. They don't seem to care as much about our company culture. They're all the sort of, it's not just the me generation, it's like the me square
Yeah.
generation. Because our generation was already the me
Yeah.
generation. So we've created these little
Right.
monsters who don't seem to understand what's going on in the world. And yet you read article after article, they're depressed, they're anxious, they feel so
Yeah.
insecure. Wait a minute, that's not the outcome that should have happened. If we were successful, if we are successful, then our children should be more secure. They should feel not more entitled, unfortunately they do, but they should feel more confident about life. They should feel better prepared because we've given them all those opportunities. But the opposite has happened. And the reason the opposite, or one reason why that has happened, is exactly these misplaced values. We've focused them all on these very material metrics and milestones, which are very nice. It's great to win awards. It's great to win competitions, and it's all really important. But if that's all there is to life, then what happens when it's over?
Right.
For whatever reasons, it's over, and that is exactly not the point. It's because you stop learning. You only giving yourself a chance to learn what it means to win a particular activity, and then you miss the whole
All
point.
schooling, right? Study for the test, teach to pass the test, teach to pass the test.
Yeah,
Isn't that? And then,
no,
and
this is
then what do you do after that? Did you remember anything? Did you really learn something, or did you just learn how to pass that test? Right? It's
exactly that's another one of my
yeah.
really, really important hot
Mm-hmm.
buttons is the problem with conventional or typical academic education is all wrong, because it is this mass manufacturing model applied to teaching, which means we know now very, very well how to measure and evaluate teaching, but we have no idea how people learn.
Right.
And that's what we have to do. That's where it really starts. That's another whole corollary to this
Right.
article, which is we teach learning. We teach this. The whole educational process is wrong because we make it work. We make it focused on the wrong things and not on really learning. We don't encourage our students to learn. We encourage our students to do basically what we told them to do, and then we turn them out in the world, and the world says, "Hey, you're not useful." This is so discouraging. I keep hearing this. I heard this in Hong Kong. I hear this here. Employers are telling the universities, your college graduates are very smart. They've obviously learned a number of skills, but they're not really useful for us as employees because they don't have the critical thinking. They don't have the problem solving skills. They don't have the the exposure to what it means to actually solve or interact, let's say, interact with the real world. And so now we have millennials who don't interact with the real world for a totally different reason, which again, we created, which is they interact everything virtually,
Right.
through electronics and through digital stuff. And there's something fundamentally very, very wrong with that. If that becomes our means of communication, our principal means, the way we interpret what a relationship means. This is why social media has become so damaging. The cyberbullying, and
Yeah.
how can that happen? How can you let someone simply post things about you and you take that personally? How does that ever compute? But of course it does, and it is so wrong because it is one of those absolutely indefensible things. What can you do about it, right? And there's very little you can do.
Yeah, and any given, I mean, not to get, I know our last podcast was actually on this topic, but just to close that loop there, yeah, with the social media thing, to your point, if it does affect these young ones especially, I mean, which we know it does, it's extremely impactful, especially when you can have possibly hundreds or if not thousands of folks that could do it to you by clicking a few buttons on their phone. They can make you feel horrible. So if you can't if you're not, we don't have that foundation to just, read that and not be affected by it. I mean, you're in for a world of hurt. And a lot of young folks are, and it's sad. I mean, I have friends that have, young daughters, especially. I feel like it's that demographic is the most impacted, at least from what I've seen personally, and just by reading. And it's, my daughter's 4. I'm petrified. I'm hoping she's young enough where things will start changing, and I'm thinking, what kind of foundation, what kind of values can I instill in her now where that won't be a thing? But I'm not all that optimistic. I just see, I don't. Society is a very powerful thing, and it evolves, I would say, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. The technology around us evolves a lot quicker than we do as people. So it's just, I don't know. Now, I guess I'll have to stop myself. The social media topic, and I think for both of us, it's extremely interesting because, in fact, we did an entire podcast last time on this. But
another day.
But and actually, that's a good point for those listening. Dr. Wu and I did a podcast. I think it was episode 5. It was maybe a few months ago, and it was on what do we call it? Humanity versus social media. So anyway, go listen to that episode. But anyway, what do you think the overarching issue? We're talking about, we brought up the problems with the teaching and the school systems, and academia has plenty of blemishes on it, in my opinion. Society itself, I mean, isn't it that basically the world is driven by money? And maybe that's just a simplistic look, but if you really think about it, the schools are teaching to pass tests to get grades, so you can get grades, good grades to get the good job. The good job is the thing that pays well. The companies that pay well, the ones that are looking to get the richest, the quickest. Like, isn't that, if you took all that out of it? Now, I have pretty, I would say, ambivalent views in this world, in this thing, because I also, and I've had a couple. Last podcast I did was, someone, I think my guest had mentioned, he had mentioned about the motivating factor of some of the these creative geniuses, and money's not really motivating factor. Because I guess my point was that on the positive side of being driven by economics and driven by capital and money in these, in general capitalistic society, a lot of good comes out of it. The medical innovation, right? Research, exploring the universe, whatever that you might be, patents, intellectual property that change how we do everything, that make our lives better, is usually comes from a drive to get rich. Now, his point to me was, and he's brilliant. He's a lot of great points. His point was that a lot of creative genius is not driven by money, and he's right there. And I think I drew the analogy to young folks at work. I'm witnessing some of the millennials. They want to be just left alone. They want to do really creative work, and they just want to do good stuff. And money is it's a motivating factor, but it's not. It's I feel like money's been knocked down a peg in terms of what really guides them, which is a great thing. However, what I was thinking after the podcast we did, I was thinking, well, that's all well and good, but these folks also aren't the ones that monetize and bring the stuff to market. They do really cool work. Right. They demo it, and then they move on to the next thing. So if you had a bunch of folks just driven by creativity and what they want to do, very little of it would get put into the market, because that's where the BS comes in, and that's where the politics comes in, and they don't want to deal with that. So, I wanted to respond with that, to have that discussion with them, but I kind of failed to. So I guess, I think there's definitely positive. There is some positive, I guess. Long story short, here there is some positive to be to be motivated by economic principles. But you need. I guess you need both. But anyway, isn't money? I guess. Like, in other words, if we all went to school for theology and just pondered, what is it? Like, we're only going to be here 100 years. Even statistically, not even that, right? 70 something is not even 80 is the lifespan for an adult male in this country, I think. And that means I'm past the 50-yard line. Like, I'm 42. That's crazy, right? So what the heck am I focused on some of this crap for, when there's so many more interesting things to, but I don't, if we all did that, we wouldn't live in such an amazing country. There wouldn't be buildings and houses and that just protect us from storms, and that electric code that we can there's so much that comes from trying to make money and get things to market. There's got to be a balance, I guess. I think.
Yeah. Again, that is exactly the point. It is. We are very blessed to be living in a society and an economy that is pretty free, and whatever scale you want to, and it's probably better than pretty much anywhere else in the world. Personal freedom as well as business freedom. And the capitalist system of economics is absolutely all about human nature, right? Everything about it, the good and the bad,
right?
is about human nature. Because we are driven to compete. This is a basic human animal instinct, and it's all good. And if you want to make products, you want to do something on a larger scale that could affect millions of people or more, it's going to take a certain kind of drive. It's going to take a certain kind of mechanism for it to be self-sustaining.
Right.
So if we were all interdirected and just, kind of wandering minstrels and philosophers, yeah, that would be great, but society would not progress. And that's not acceptable. That would never happen in the United States. And it probably shouldn't, that's for these mythical islands somewhere where there are, 500 people and they're all this homogeneous, relatively homogeneous blend of very gentle folk. It's all about balance. It's about a society, a society where there's choice. The whole point is having choice. And whatever choice you want to make, you want to be this incredibly driven. You see, so again, from my lens, these entrepreneurs who are very, very successful, or want to be very, very successful, it's not really about the money. It is kind of about the fame, but not really. It's really the idea that I can do something really big. And of course, that is an ego drive. But the paradox, and I love to tell students that you have this incredible paradox as an entrepreneur. And that on the one hand, you have to be very strong and confident and basically ready to take on whatever the world throws at you. But at the same time, because you realize that every day you are exploring the unknown, literally for yourselves, you have to be open to learning from everybody and everything. And that requires an openness and a humility that seems to be at the opposite end of the personality spectrum from being this very strong, confident person. But I think that, again, I think that dichotomy, that apparent conflict, that paradox is simply one of these issues of mental perception. It's not real. Obviously, people live this way all the time. Elon Musk doesn't do what he does just to get the adulation, although I'm sure that's important to him. No, he just thinks, hey, I'm a smart guy, and I'm really setting out to change the world. And not everything he does is positive. Not the way he treats people, apparently, is not very positive. Steve Jobs was kind of like the same way. So, there's the issue of personal balance, but there's also a balance across society that says, someone has to have ambition in these different things. We need superstar athletes. We need superstar entertainers. We need, these brilliant entrepreneurs. We need all of these people. And what we want to encourage is the positive side of human nature, because there's so much crap on the other side as well within each of us, right? And we, of course, have to be somewhat tolerant of that, but the only way we're going to really improve as a society is by encouraging all these positive aspects. And this is where learning becomes so critical. Learning is the single most positive thing. Now, of course, it can be perverted too, right? We talk about young people who go through the juvenile detention system, and then every time you throw them into a juvenile detention, and then they start with small crimes, they learn how to be better criminals from more experienced criminals. And it only gets worse. It is fascinating, right? But of course, people who choose to live a life of illegal activities, they have to learn too, right? Otherwise, they're not going to improve. They're not. So it's not money. Money is a way of keeping score. And of course, there are plenty of people who are motivated and they count their net worth every
Right.
week or whatever. Um, but I think that's actually, again, a relatively small minority. I think most people are actually, well, again, most entrepreneurs are not real. And I think in the startup phase, early stages, it's actually very easy because it's easy not to focus on the money because everything's paper money,
Right.
right? Yeah, you say, oh, my company is valued at $1 billion and I have 50% of the stock. Sure, that on paper, I'm supposed to have $500 million, but it's not
Right,
real.
right. Good luck buying
Yes, you can
you probably
borrow
can't buy
against it.
you couldn't buy a pack of gum because you really have no real money at that point.
Well, there are banks who'd love to put you in debt
Sure,
for
of
that,
course,
but
right.
you really, anything could happen, and then suddenly it isn't real. So that's also fascinating. The life of an entrepreneur is full of these illusions, which you have to have, and they're not totally fake, but they're not totally real either. They are all mental constructs built on on the energy and the dedication that you have. And this is the point we talk about, and you talked about in your notes, and I use as an example of the kind of authenticity that people need to present. Um, Entrepreneurs need to present
Right.
when they're pitching to a potential investor. That's actually a very important idea, that somehow it's it is, of course, your performance, your ability to deliver the outcomes that really matters. But if people, when they listen to you, if people don't get the feeling, they don't respond with, wow, this person is really exceptional,
Right.
it doesn't really matter about the outcome. And that's what's so interesting, right? We focus so much on the
Yeah. Yeah.
outcome, and this is maybe a way to sort of summarize what we've been talking about. So much of our society is focused on the materialistic outcomes, like money or like an award of some
Yep.
sort, or winning at a competition. If we keep focusing on those, then we miss the fact that what was really important here was the
Yeah.
journey, the journey of the superstar athlete or the entertainer. I am really impressed by the new crop of young stars in those particular areas, in athletics and in entertainment. They are remarkably intelligent. They are, I've not met them in person, but they seem like they have much stronger skills in terms of interpersonal activity. Now, their lives can still be messy, right? They have
Sure. Yeah.
drug problems, they
Sure.
have relationship issues. That's normal. They're human beings, but in those professions and those industries, they have to work with their human nature. When they reach that level, that high level, and this as a musician, when you reach that high level, it's actually really about who you are, how you perceive, how you want to communicate who you are, far more than so-called raw
Right.
talent, and certainly more than the hard work you put into just being able to perform at that level.
Yeah. I mean, as I feel like, I mean, a lot of your themes through a lot of your blogs are on entrepreneurship, and I know that's a whole segment of your profession. And I kind of wrote a note, and it kind of summarized this whole world nicely. Like I said, this has some real scratch notes here. I mean, I think everything that you speak about, I feel like from the entrepreneurship lens, is kind of it's a metaphor for life. It's a metaphor for living a better life, I think, right? So if you're sitting there,
Absolutely.
and I have friends, and I always been, I tend to gravitate towards entrepreneur type folks, and my friends and I are always thinking about what could we do. And I have, IP lawyer friends, and I'm always like, oh, what if we had this little widget? I mean, that's all, definitely on my bucket list of, I'm going to create a product at some point. I don't care if it fails, but absolutely. It's just, I have so many in the basement. I won't even get into that. But the idea is, when you see someone, and when you watch Shark Tank, all those, popular things, but even at work, if someone is conveying a technical concept to me, and I know I can detect it from a mile away when someone is just kind of trying to make me happy with the words they're saying and trying to address what they think I want them to say. And the other folks that are just, they light up like a Christmas tree when they're explaining some technical concept, and they really want to try this new thing. And I'm like, I wasn't even thinking that, and I don't even think that's the right thing to do right now, based on the contract, timing and all that. But you know what? Go do it, because the passion you have right now is absolutely so.
Yeah.
I imagine that, as when you're, whether you're on a panel of potential, a venture capitalist looking to, spend some money on a young entrepreneur, that passion comes through. To your point, I feel like that's gonna be weighed quite heavily. Now, if their idea is crap and it'll never monetize, you gotta weigh that as well, obviously. But that passion must be, because again, it's more the intrinsic. You must look at this person and say, they're not going to give up. They're going to give up.
Yeah.
They're going to give up. They're going to be
Yeah.
going when everyone else gave up because the money wasn't right or they hit some problem.
Right.
If you're just focused on that, you're going to give up pretty easily. And guess what? As an entrepreneur, you're going to be. Society's going to tell you to give up many, many, many times. So I would imagine in your, this is, you have a lot of professional, I would say, experience here. That's got to be true, right? That when you see that passion in someone, does that get you excited? I got to imagine it would.
Exactly, because nobody's plan works out the way they originally started. All these great startups, they'll tell you the story of how we did this, did that, and
They have no idea,
it seems
right?
like everything just went along smoothly, and that's simply not true. In the lives of entertainers, again, and superstar athletes, it's never been that smooth. There are all kinds of problems. They had accidents and injuries and setbacks of one kind or another, and everyone has personal crap. Hey, that's not it. The issue is both the resilience, which you just mentioned, but the other is the learning. These people are absolutely passionate about learning, and you can see this because whatever their particular activity is at which they obviously excel, they learn to use that intelligence to do lots of other things. And that I find really remarkable. This is not what we used to see 30 years ago, where people were, I wouldn't call them more one-dimensional, but they they seem to be more limited in the choices they made. And they were rewarded for excelling at what they did. And they were certainly extraordinary talents at their time, and they worked very hard. They did kind of the same things.
Stayed at their company for 40 years.
I don't think they grew. Right? They didn't grow as much as the ones are growing now. And of course, it's a reflection of how much more complex life is, and the more tools we have, the more of everything that we have. And so, if we want a free society and a free economy where we encourage, everybody to do whatever, it's all good. It's not about making judgments. Right. And I hope that's something that comes through in my thinking and in my writing. I make observations as we've discussed about, what's wrong or what is outdated about the academic traditions, but we could talk about any industry, any corporate type of thinking, and we would have the same things. That's not the wrong part. That's not bad. That's good. That's a constructive, critical thinking that says, here's how we can get a better outcome. We can make more money. We can have better employees, and we can build society better. But the big but is the only way we're going to get there, the better, overall better, is if we remember to focus on our really core values, what is really important to us as human beings, as well as to us individually. And as you said, like taking care of our family and so on. Of course, we have to do that. But it's the core values of what makes us humans and makes us want to have positive interactions with other people. That's what is enduring. And I think that's, again, one of the important drives that entrepreneurs learn, because it can't be all about me for most of them. It can't be just about the money, because that's an illusion until much, much later. And you go through so much so many peaks and valleys, so many challenges, that if you don't love the idea of the challenges, if you don't love the idea that, wow, here's another opportunity for me to, whatever terrible things happen to you, this is another opportunity to learn and grow. If you don't appreciate that, of course you won't do this life. Right. It's just way too hard. There's no doubt. The life of a true entrepreneur is really, really challenging. Brutal, and there's a price.
It's brutal,
right?
But
there's a financial price. But emotional and social
100%. And I see, we do a lot of hiring at the current job, and when I see someone that has tried 3 or 4 small jobs, whether it's, usually in kind of some element of software, they're trying to do something. And I remember one person telling me, well, they tried a bunch of things. They really kind of failed every time, and they were talking about it as a negative. And I said, wait a minute. You got to get out of that mindset. This person has spent 20 years of their life trying startups and quote unquote, to your definition, failing. I'm like, you imagine the knowledge they're coming in with here. They're never going to give up they're going to be in a very stable environment here at an actual job with a paycheck that's being signed by somebody else.
Yeah.
They're going to be the last person to give up. They're going to have more perspective on things that you and I can't even talk. Like, I just was seeing it as nothing but positive. And I think, I was helping change that dynamic. I see entrepreneurs come in that have tried and failed. I said, this dude started his own company. And I want to hire them right now. I love it. I love that concept. I mean, they just bring so much more to the table. Exactly. They understand how to talk to people. They understand economy. They don't it's more than just technology. I mean, I just think that it's so much of a positive. I mean, absolutely. And you're right. It's brutal. So you have to be, it's brutal. So you have to be driven by the right values. Otherwise you just going to, a year or two and you're done. I mean, you're just going to be fried.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Where do you think things are going? I mean, do you kind of like closing this, I guess bringing this full circle? 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, my kids are my age. What are they going to be having the same conversation, starting a podcast with some guy saying, I wonder these kids today, and it won't be millennials. It'll be some other. Is AI going to change things so much where then we'll all be able to, and this is hopeful thinking, wishful thinking, where will AI change things so that, to the point where the menial tasks, the jobs that a lot of us do today, just because we have to earn a living because the economy more or less demands it, would go away and be replaced by AI, and many of us can take a step back and do things that are more creative and fill, quote unquote, fill our bucket, if you will, with whatever our core values are. Is that a thing?
There certainly are futurists who are predicting that today, and I can't remember who some of these names are. Ray Kurzweil's name comes up to mind, but I can't pin down a specific thing. But there are plenty of very, very smart, very knowledgeable people who present that as the future, and human beings will work, 3 days a week or 2 days a week or whatever, and then the rest of your time you can make music and draw art and whatever. And maybe that'll happen. I think what is more realistic is the idea that human nature fundamentally isn't going to change in the next 30, 50, 100 years. Hasn't changed in however thousands of years we have had societies. It's not going to change that quickly. Now, of course, having said that, society values do change. Our own personal values also do change from time to time, but not our basic human nature. The good and bad of human beings has and ever will be whatever it is. And it's this glorious mix of conflicting emotions and conflicting values. And that's what makes society interesting. Now, one of the things I think I mentioned, I may have mentioned last time, and I think since you brought up AI, is that
I find a way to bring that up on every podcast, by the way. So it was inevitable.
Sure. AI, there's several groups of researchers in AI, and including Elon Musk too, who are suggesting that we need to embed some, let's call them moral principles or at least ethical principles into AI. And I have been actually talking about, I wrote about in my blog that, blockchain, another relatively new technology, also has a moral core. And this is interesting. We have never, ever, society, human beings have never built tools that have an inherent moral choice, meaning if you choose to use this, it will give advantages to good players and disadvantages to bad players. It doesn't prevent bad players or criminals from using AI or using blockchain for their own purposes. That, unfortunately, this is the way the world works. Education in that sense is free. People learn how to use these tools, and some will use them for good, some will use them for bad. that's a different issue. But if you can build into the tool some capability, so for example, the prime features of blockchain are the idea of transparency and availability, sharing of information for the common good as well as for your own
Right.
good. And I point out that that's a moral choice, because that's not the way we have always lived, and that's not the way business has typically been done. We typically think of information as a proprietary advantage, and so we don't want to share that with other people. We don't want to share data with other people. But now major corporations like IBM and Walmart, they have a joint venture. Walmart is going to put all of its logistics supply chain data onto a block. It's requiring all of its suppliers to participate in this blockchain. So everyone is going to know when you make your widget in China or wherever it's coming from. Every time it gets onto a truck, onto a boat, onto a plane, whoever handles it, the package itself will have tracking devices so that in real time everyone will know where that package is. And think about what the ramifications are for things like food safety or drug safety and so on. Suddenly the traceability, now of course it makes everyone accountable, which is the whole point here, and that's also a moral choice. When information is opaque and asymmetric, then that's when corruption comes in. That's when people, of course, errors, inadvertent errors also come in. But it's basically saying, we don't know what's going on. We just hope that people are doing what they say they're doing. And today we realize, and again, social media is the perfect example. We don't know what the hell is going on. We don't know who these people are.
Well, anonymity is a huge problem, right? Yeah, I think anonymity is one of the biggest driving forces to a lot of these issues. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's lack of accountability, lack of transparency. But if people have to be accountable and transparent, then that changes things. Anyway, so there are researchers in AI that are thinking, how do we design the AI so the AI itself can also make some distinctions? And they're using this now to help distinguish so-called fake news. I mean, real fake news, not President Trump's version of fake news.
You mean anything he doesn't like?
Things that are inaccurate, untruths and so on. So there is a way for people to filter through. Right now, we are absolutely in this world that there's just way too much noise, and we don't know what's going on, and that leads to a general sense of insecurity among all of us. If we don't know what's true, we don't know what's real. Now we're really, really in trouble because we don't know where to trust. We don't know what to believe. On the other hand, right, because there's always on the other hand, what that does is that it actually encourages us to be more critical thinkers, to develop these new tools, to question and maybe to talk to people that we do trust on a personal level. And hopefully, like in your podcast, this helps bring together a greater awareness and a greater intelligence, a greater collective intelligence. And that's the way we're going to move. That's how society actually improves, is this idea of collective intelligence. There'll always be fringes. There'll always be, crazy people who do all kinds of things. But if we can, and it's kind of like the analogy to the middle class in an economic structure. I'm very much a believer that, entrepreneurship leads to a middle class, and building a middle class is what builds stability. It's not about the handful of incredibly successful superstars and whatever they do. We need them. We absolutely need them, and they deserve whatever they get. But the real problem is that the society has to provide opportunities for hope. It needs to provide opportunities for growth. It needs to present the positive side of human nature and say, while society will inherently have inequities, we should continuously strive to support what is good in all of us and what is good for society. And AI could do that more effectively than humans, because it can consider the technology has the capability of including so many more factors than the human brain is capable of. The reason we are stuck where we are is the human brain has inherent limitations. We all know that. We can only deal with so many facts. We can only deal with so much data. And we are exploring a world where the data explosion is just unbelievable. Every year they say the amount of new data that is collected and gathered is equal to the entire history of all the data since we ever started recording. So we're absolutely being drowned in data. And if we don't think of some better ways of sorting through that, we are going to become really, really lost.
Yeah, my last podcast we touched on the ethics of AI. We also touched on the whole deep fake. I don't know if you've seen some of these deep fakes with some of the videos that you cannot.
That's so scary.
You almost can't. You really can't distinguish between what's real and what's not. That these are just, and folks listening, these are videos where you're seeing folks talk and speak, or and their lips are matching the words they're saying exactly, and the reality is that they're doctored videos where they weren't actually saying that. It's pretty again, and it's anonymity. Anyone can change anything with a computer and a little bit of tech savvy. Some of these programs you can use aren't even that hard anymore, right? So I think blockchain and other things to start that traceability from source, the whole supply chain traceability is going to be huge. So Internet 2.0 is going to be the topic of our next podcast, I think, because I think blockchain is going to be a key part of that, right? We're kind of decentralizing the internet and not having it these 3 or 4 juggernauts owning all of our data and all that. I think that's going to be interesting.
Well, that's certainly one of the directions of the next generation of the internet.
Very interesting. Well, Pochi, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for the and just for the listeners, I gave Dr. Wu about, was it 24 hours notice? Well, not even. Like, that's being. It's like, so I had some unexpected free time today, so I thought we'd get a recording, and I do appreciate it. And talking to you is easy as, I don't know, talking to anyone. So I'm glad you were.
I know, it's such a pleasure too. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. This is Unlatched Mind. See you next time. Bye.